9 out of every 10 prescriptions filled in America are generic, the cheap, everyday pills in your cabinet. But the active ingredient inside them, the part that actually treats you, is made almost entirely overseas. Only about 10% of that ingredient, by volume, is made in the United States. That one number has US defense officials calling this a national security problem. By the end, you'll see why the cheapest medicine in the world is also the most fragile. Start with how much of American medicine is generic. About 90% of all prescriptions filled in the United States are generic drugs. That is the amoxicillin, the ibuprofen, the blood pressure pill, the workhorses of everyday care. Only about 1 in 10 scripts is a brand-name drug. So when we talk about American medicine, we are mostly talking about generics. And that single fact hides a strange twist about money. Here is that twist as one bar. By volume, generics are 90% of the prescriptions Americans fill. Brand-name drugs are just 10%. Almost everything you swallow is generic. But flip to dollars, and the picture inverts completely. Those 90% of pills account for only a small slice of what the country spends on drugs. The medicine you take and the money you spend are two different stories. Let's put the numbers side by side. Look at the split directly. Generics are 90% of prescriptions, but only about 12% of drug spending. Americans filled 3.9 billion generic scripts in a single year for roughly $98 billion. The brand-name drugs, a tiny sliver of the pills, soak up almost all the money. So generics are cheap, everywhere, and taken for granted. That is exactly what makes the next fact so easy to miss. One pill is really 3 layers. Every tablet you take is actually a stack of 3 things. On top is the pill, the finished dose that reaches your hand. Underneath is the API, the active pharmaceutical ingredient, the chemistry that treats you. And below that is the key starting material, the raw chemical the ingredient is built from. The deeper you go, the more the making concentrates overseas. A pill can say made in India, while its chemistry began somewhere else entirely. Keep that pyramid in mind. Now go one layer deeper, to the active ingredient. Of all the API that goes into American medicine, only about 10%, by volume, is actually made in the United States. Read that again. 9/10 of the chemistry inside American pills is produced somewhere else. This is the film's spine, the number we keep returning to. The finished pill can be packaged here, but the part that heals you usually is not. And one whole category has vanished completely. Consider penicillin, the drug that started the antibiotic age. The number of plants in America that still ferment penicillin from scratch is 0. Not few. 0. The last one closed in 2004. Ending a capability the country had held since the Second World War. A medicine America invented at scale, it no longer makes at its source. So who is worried about this? The people whose job is national security. This is not an activist talking point. It is how the US Department of Defense describes the risk. In testimony to Congress, an official warned that if a single supplier chose to restrict these ingredients, quote, it would have a debilitating effect on US production. That is the Pentagon, describing everyday medicine as a strategic vulnerability. It is why this story is not really about health alone. To understand how it got here, we have to rewind 80 years. Here is how the making left America in 4 dates. In 1943, a penicillin plant opened in Syracuse to supply the war effort. In 2004, the last such plant closed, and domestic penicillin fermentation ended. In 2008, a contaminated ingredient from overseas triggered a deadly crisis. And in 2020, the pandemic exposed just how dependent the supply chain had become. Each step was quiet on its own. Together, they rebuilt where medicine comes from. Return to that penicillin plant, because it tells the whole story. Built in 1943, it once supplied as much as 70% of America's penicillin. For decades, it was a symbol of a country that made its own cures. Then, in 2004, it closed, priced out by cheaper production abroad. No scandal, no headline, just an economic decision. And 4 years later, the cost of leaning on distant suppliers turned tragic. In 2008 came the warning nobody could ignore. A blood thinner called heparin, made with an ingredient sourced from China, was contaminated somewhere in the supply chain. The tainted batches reached American patients. 81 deaths in the United States were linked to it. This was not a geopolitical attack. It was a quality failure, made harder to catch by distance. It showed that the danger in a long supply chain is not only politics. So why did the making leave in the first place? Price. The answer is almost entirely about cost. Making the active ingredient overseas, at enormous scale, is far cheaper than making it at home. Look at antibiotic import prices since 1992. Indexed to 100 at the start, they fell to roughly 8, a drop of more than 90%. That collapse is exactly why production moved. Cheaper ingredients meant cheaper pills for everyone. And that, honestly, was a real benefit, not a scandal. Let's be fair about the upside, because it is genuine. Offshoring drove the price of generic drugs down to pennies a dose. Americans filled 3.9 billion generic scripts for about $98 billion, a fraction of what those medicines once cost. Antibiotics alone are roughly 90% cheaper than in 1992. That is a real win of global specialization, not a villain. The trouble is where all that cheap chemistry now comes from. Follow it upstream. Trace the ingredient back, and one country dominates. India makes about 48% of the active ingredients that America imports, nearly half. It has become the pharmacy to the world, and much of your generic medicine begins there. That sounds like a diversified, healthy supply, but the pyramid has one more layer. Because the question isn't only where the pill is made, it's where India gets its own chemistry, and that answer runs deeper. Here is the layer most maps miss. India supplies about 48% of America's active ingredients. But India itself imports roughly 70% of its own active ingredient chemistry from China. So the pill labeled "Made in India" often rests on Chinese key starting materials. The dependence you can see is smaller than the dependence you can't. When you follow the chemistry all the way down, it converges. So where do the factories actually sit? Count the API factories by where they are registered. On this measure, the shares are surprisingly even. The United States about 22%, India 21%, China 20%, the European Union 19%, and the rest of the world 18%. By facility count, America looks competitive. But here is the catch. Counting buildings is not counting output. A single large plant can make more than a dozen small ones. And that is where the real concentration hides. Facilities lie a little, so weigh the volume instead. China and India together hold roughly 40% of the world's API plants. But those plants produce something like 80% of the actual volume. A handful of very large factories make most of the medicine. That is why the even-looking donut is misleading, and why America's 10% volume share is the number that matters. Concentration isn't about counting plants. It's about who makes the most. And for the raw chemicals, one country leads. Go to the deepest layer, the key starting materials, and the dependence is stark. For ibuprofen, as much as 95% of the raw chemistry traces to China. For amoxicillin, about 94%. For heparin, around 74%. For acetaminophen, roughly 70%. These are per drug estimates, drawn from the Council on Foreign Relations and others, and they are not small numbers. For some of the most common medicines on Earth, the chemistry has a single origin. Multiply that across the pharmacy. Now scale it up. By one estimate, about 700 medicines used in the United States depend on a single Chinese chemical with no ready alternative. 700. If any one of those chemicals stops flowing, the drug built on it is at risk. This is not a hypothetical. It is a structural choke point hiding inside the supply chain. And when a choke point tightens, it doesn't announce itself. It shows up as empty shelves. Watch how the choke point appears in real life. Active drug shortages in the United States climbed year after year, 225, then 260, then 301. In early 2024, they hit 323, the highest count since tracking began. Then, in 2025, they eased back toward 220. So the record is real, and so is the recent relief. The trend is not doom, but the fragility is proven. Which drugs went short? The shortages were not abstract. In 2022 and 23, amoxicillin, the pink antibiotic for sick kids, ran short across the country. In 2023 and 24, Chemotherapy drugs like cisplatin and carboplatin went scarce, forcing hospitals to ration cancer care. And more than half of the shortages in 2024 were injectable medicines, the hardest to substitute. These are not luxuries. They are the drugs people cannot skip. Some see leverage in that. The vulnerability has not gone unnoticed abroad. A prominent Chinese economist, Li Daokuei, once put it bluntly in state media. Speaking of pharmaceutical exports, he said, quote, "Once the export is reduced, the medical systems of some developed countries will not work." He was describing leverage, not making a threat, and it should be read that way. But it names the stakes plainly. The obvious question is whether any of this can be reversed. The money says maybe. There is real movement to bring production home. Eli Lilly announced about $27 billion for 4 new U.S. plants. Across the industry, announced commitments now top $370 billion, with roughly 22 new American sites on the drawing board. That is serious capital, and it is genuinely happening. But announcements are not factories, and building takes years. Meanwhile, the government is trying a faster, simpler fix: hold a reserve. In August of 2025, the White House ordered a strategic API reserve. The idea is a national stockpile of the ingredients behind the most critical medicines. The plan targets about 26 essential drugs, with roughly 6 months of supply held in reserve. It is a buffer, not a cure, a way to survive a disruption while the real fix is built. And the real fix, new domestic plants, is exactly the part that cannot be rushed. Here is why reshoring is slow. Building a new active ingredient plant and getting it approved takes roughly 5 years, often 4 to 6. You cannot summon a chemical factory in a crisis. And the economics fight back. A domestic plant makes more expensive medicine than the overseas one it replaces. So the fix works against the very cheapness that built the system. Which points to the honest question: what exactly is the risk we're trying to fix? Be precise about the danger, because nationality is the wrong frame. The real risk is quality and oversight, not which flag flies over the plant. Distance makes inspection harder. About 62% of FDA drug inspections are now overseas. The 2008 heparin deaths were a quality failure in the chain, not a geopolitical act. A well-run plant abroad can be safer than a sloppy one at home. The problem is oversight at a distance. So what is beyond dispute? Strip out the politics, and a few facts simply stand. About 90% of American prescriptions are generic. Only around 10% of the active ingredient volume behind them is made in the United States. And shortages recently hit record highs before easing. You can argue about what to do: reshore, stockpile, diversify, but not about the shape of the system. The medicine is cheap, essential, and concentrated far away. That combination is the whole story. So here is the paradox in one line. America built the cheapest medicine in the world, 3.9 billion generic scripts for pennies a dose. And in doing it, America built the most fragile supply chain too, with only about 10% of the chemistry made at home. Cheap and fragile turned out to be the same choice. This is descriptive data journalism, not policy advice. If the numbers made it click, subscribe, a new data story every day.